HOA Karen burned old black woman's house to the ground, then walked into her son Courtroom. The next week, Evelyn Carter sat on the porch of her small, weather-worn house, her hands folded over her lap. The cream cardigan she wore wasn't for warmth. It was for comfort. This was the sweater James, her late husband, used to call her Sunday best because she always wore it when she wanted to feel close to him. The house behind her looked tired. Paint chipped from the wood, shutters hung crooked, and weeds poked up in the corners of the yard. But Evelyn didn't see those things. She saw the hammer James had gripped 45 years ago, the sweat on his brow as he raised each beam, the smile on his lips when he carried her over the threshold for the first time. "This house is your heart, James," she whispered. "And I promised I'd keep it beating, but someone else saw only decay." Evelyn. The sharp voice cut through the quiet afternoon like a knife. Patricia Whitfield, the new HOA president, stood at the edge of the walkway in her pressed navy blouse, sunglasses perched on her head. She was the kind of woman who always spoke loud enough for others to hear, even when pretending she wasn't. "You still haven't taken care of the siding. And the shutters, an embarrassment. Honestly, this house is dragging down the whole block." Evelyn stood slowly, her knees stiff, but her voice calm. "I do what I can. I don't have the money for all those repairs." Patricia crossed her arms, tilting her head with a mocking smile. "Then maybe you shouldn't live here. You've got grown children, don't you? I see them driving up in their shiny cars. Why don't they fix it for you? Or better yet, why don't you move in with them?" Evelyn's jaw tightened. "This was my husband's house. He built it with his hands. I made him a promise." Patricia laughed. The kind of laugh meant to humiliate. A promise to cling to a shack until it crumbles. "Evelyn, your sentimentality is holding this neighborhood hostage." "You call it sentimentality," Evelyn said softly, her eyes burning with quiet dignity. "I call it love, and love is not hostage." Neighbors began to glance over fences, listening. Patricia leaned closer, lowering her voice, but making sure the audience heard. "You're too proud to admit the truth. You can't afford to be here anymore. Everyone knows it. You're living on scraps, and this place shows it." Evelyn's hands trembled against her cardigan. "I pay my dues barely." Patricia snapped. "And you think that gives you the right to let this place rot? Number. If you won't take action, I will." The words chilled Evelyn. "Are you threatening me?" Patricia smiled. Slow, deliberate. "I'm protecting the neighborhood." Then she turned on her heel, striding away as her heels clicked against the pavement. That night, Evelyn sat at her small kitchen table, a cup of tea untouched in front of her. She dialed her daughter, Leah. "Baby, she won't stop." Evelyn whispered, she says, "I'm dragging everyone down." Leah's voice cracked through the receiver. "Mama, come stay with us, please. You shouldn't be alone. Not with that woman breathing down your neck." Evelyn shook her head. "Your father built this house for us. I won't walk away just because someone thinks it looks tired." "Mama," Leah pleaded, "you don't need walls to remember Daddy. You have us." Evelyn's lips pressed tight. She wouldn't burden them. Marcus had his law practice. Leah worked double shifts. They had their own lives. She wouldn't ask them to carry hers. Days turned into weeks, and Patricia's harassment only sharpened. Notices piled in the mailbox. At HOA meetings, Patricia ridiculed her openly. One evening, Evelyn walked into the meeting hall, cardigan buttoned neatly, head held high. Patricia stood at the front. "Neighbors," Patricia announced. "We've asked Mrs. Carter repeatedly to address her property. She refuses. And look at the result. A blight on our street. Is this the image we want?" Murmurs rippled through the room. Evelyn rose slowly. "This house is not blight. It is a life, a marriage, a family. You see peeling paint. I see the boards my husband nailed with love. I see the windows we saved years to afford. You cannot shame me for honoring him." A few neighbors lowered their eyes. Patricia only smirked. "Lovely speech, Evelyn. But speeches don't change the fact that your house is falling apart, and I will not let your sentiment ruin our standards." Evelyn looked straight at her. "Standards without compassion are cruelty, and cruelty will never be my standard." Patricia's lips curled. "Then perhaps you'll learn that the hard way." Evelyn felt the words settle deep like smoke before fire. She clutched James's photograph that night tighter than ever. "They want me gone," she whispered into the darkness. "But James, I promised I'd stay." Outside in the quiet street, a figure lingered in the shadows, watching the old house. The tension between dignity and cruelty had reached its breaking point, and the night was far from over. The house smelled faintly of smoke before Evelyn even realized it. She woke to the sound of crackling wood, her heart hammering. Flames licked along the curtains, crawling up the walls that James had once built with his own hands. She stumbled forward, clutching the picture frame of his smiling face. "James," she gasped through the heat. "Your house, our house." The fire roared louder, greedy, consuming decades of memories. Evelyn stumbled into the night air, coughing, tears burning her eyes. Neighbors shouted. Some dialed 911, but none moved toward the inferno. And there, across the street, arms folded and lips curled into a cruel smile, stood Patricia Whitfield. Evelyn's voice cracked as she pointed. You did this." Patricia tilted her head, the smirk never leaving her lips. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The satisfaction in her eyes said everything. By morning, nothing remained but blackened ruins. Evelyn sat on the curb in her soot-stained cardigan, clutching James's photo. "I kept it as long as I could," she whispered broken. But she took it all. When Marcus and Leah arrived, their faces twisted in anguish. "Mama," Marcus said, kneeling beside her. "You can't stay here anymore. You'll come with us now." Evelyn shook her head. "It's gone. The home your father built. It's all gone." "You built us, Mama," Leah said, tears streaming. "That was his true gift. Not wood, not bricks. Us." But Evelyn only wept. "I never asked you for help because I wanted you free. Your father and I scraped by so you could rise higher. That's why I had nothing left when the house needed saving. I gave it all to you." Leah gripped her mother's hand. "And we'll spend the rest of our lives giving it back." The police investigation moved quickly. Witnesses had seen Patricia near the property that night. Her history of harassment was well documented. Within days, she was arrested, charged with arson, destruction of property, and endangering life. Still, Evelyn could hardly believe it when she walked into the courtroom the following week. The benches creaked beneath her as she sat, cardigan neat, despite the soot stains that never seemed to wash out. She clutched James's photograph in her purse, whispering, "You'll see, love. Justice will speak." The bailiff's voice rang out, "All rise." Evelyn rose with the crowd, and then her breath caught. Because behind the bench in his black robe, gavel in hand, stood her son, Judge Marcus Carter. Her heart swelled and broke at once. She had known her son was respected, but in that moment, seeing him preside with dignity, she felt James's spirit in the room. Patricia shuffled in, hands cuffed, her once proud posture wilted. She glanced at Evelyn in the gallery and sneered faintly. But when her eyes lifted to the bench and she saw who sat there, the color drained from her face. Judge Carter's gaze was steady and passive. "Patricia Whitfield, you stand accused of arson, reckless endangerment, and the destruction of property. How do you plead?" Patricia stammered, her usual arrogance cracking. I didn't. This is ridiculous." The evidence spoke louder than her words. Neighbors testified. The fire marshal's report was clear. The HOA notices, her threats, her smirks, all became pieces of a puzzle that painted her guilt unmistakably. Through it all, Evelyn sat silently, her trembling hands pressed together. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. She only watched as the woman who mocked her dignity now trembled in chains before her son. At last, Marcus raised his gavel. His voice was firm, unwavering. "Patricia Whitfield, this court finds you guilty. You will serve time for your crimes. Justice demands no less." The gavel struck, echoing like thunder. Patricia's shoulders sagged as guards led her away, her smirk gone at last. Evelyn exhaled a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but for the first time, they weren't born of humiliation or loss. They were release. As the courtroom emptied, Marcus came to her side. No longer the judge, but the son she had raised. "Mama," he whispered, taking her hand. "She can't hurt you anymore." Evelyn's eyes shone. She lifted James's photo from her purse, holding it close. "He built the house. But you built justice, and now his promise is safe." For the first time since the flames, Evelyn stood tall. Patricia's cruelty had burned her home to ashes, but karma had burned Patricia's pride to nothing. And Evelyn, though scarred, walked out of the courtroom with her head high, her dignity unbroken.